You're listening to episode 28 of Liz's Healthy Table.
Looking for a healthy new way to feed your family without the hassle and hype? Welcome to Liz's Healthy Table, where your host, registered dietitian nutritionist Liz Weiss, serves up fresh and flavorful recipes with a tasty side of science, good nutrition, and fun. Are you and your family ready for some wholesome food that tastes great too? Don't change that dial. Your food adventure starts here.
Welcome to the show, everyone. Today's topic is all about the microbiome. That's the trillions of bacteria that live in you and on you. Now, those good-for-you bugs, for the most part, they live in your intestinal tract, also known as your gut. And research shows that these good bugs play a really important role in everything from good digestion to regulating your metabolism, your immune system, and get this, even your mood. And I hope you're in a good mood right now. I heard this statistic one time, and it pretty much blew my mind. Basically, if you were to line up the bacteria that live in your gut end to end, they would reach the moon. You got a lot of good bugs in your gut. So this is an important topic, and I'm really excited to discuss it today with Brierley Horton. Now, Brierley is the Food and Nutrition Director of Cooking Light magazine. And if you have not seen their June issue yet, you got to pick it up, because this issue is all about gut health. I mean, the entire issue. It's so fascinating. So Brierley is going to be here in a few minutes to give your microbiome a healthy makeover. And she's going to do that by giving you a list of foods that are rich in probiotics. Those are the beneficial bacteria. So you want to eat probiotic foods. So we're going to tell you what they are. She's also going to tell you about prebiotic foods. Now, prebiotic foods are the foods that bacteria love to eat. Right? They've got to eat something. You got trillions of them. So when you eat certain foods, and we're going to tell you what they are, those are foods that bacteria love to eat. So when you eat them, your gut microbiome becomes very happy and much healthier. So you definitely want to stick around for that. We've got recipes to share, including a broccoli and sauerkraut slaw. And it's kind of like a 1-2 punch, because you're going to get probiotics in this recipe and prebiotics. And we're going to give you some other surprising ways to nurture your microbiome beyond what you put on your plate. It's really about lifestyle. We're giving away a copy of Cooking Light's Fresh Food Fast cookbook. You want to head on over to the show notes page for the Liz's Healthy Table podcast, today's episode, and then you can enter the giveaway on the show notes page. It is U.S. only. The book's really great. It's got 200 recipes. They take 15 minutes to make, just 5 ingredients. If it's from Cooking Light, they're going to be healthy recipes. And so, again, head on over to Liz's Healthy Table to enter that giveaway. Liz's Healthy Table is brought to you by superhealthykids.com. Have you checked out their meal planning app yet? It's called Prepare. And if you listened to episode 27 of the podcast, Amy and Natalie from Super Healthy Kids helped me kick off season 2. They were on the show. They talked about fast family dinners. You definitely want to listen in on that show. Liz's Healthy Table is also brought to you by the Parents on Demand Network. Now, this is an app. You can download it to your phone. It is filled with parenting podcasts, including shows like the Informed Pregnancy podcast, hosted by prenatal chiropractor Dr. Elliot Berlin. The show is entertaining. It's informative. They've got real parents that come on the show, so lots of great information there. You can learn all about it, the Informed Pregnancy, and many more shows, including mine, by downloading the Parents on Demand app. Learn more at parentsondemand.com. All right, your good bugs are waiting for all this good advice from today's show. Let's take it away. Brierley, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I'm excited because I love everything having to do with the microbiome, it's such a cool topic. But before we kind of dig into that, I just want you to tell my listeners just a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I am Food and Nutrition Director for Cooking Light. I am a registered dietitian, and I also have 2 little girls, 2.5 and 5. And we live in Birmingham, Alabama, because that is where Cooking Light's headquarters are.
What's it like living in Alabama? Because you're not from there, right?
I am not. No, I'm originally from outside Philadelphia, and I moved here from Vermont because I previously worked for Eating Well magazine. It is this time of year, it's beautiful in Alabama, but in about a month or so, it will become oppressively hot and humid. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, it's fun. I mean, we've really enjoyed exploring, Southern food culture, Southern culture. There is actually a lot of really wonderful family-friendly and outdoor activities to do here. So it's constantly exploring. And
I believe the Highland Bar and Grill just won Best Restaurant in the country from James Beard, right?
They did. It was their 10th year being nominated, and they have not won yet, and they finally won on their 10th nomination, which is amazing, amazing. And their pastry chef also won an award as well.
So people listening, you need to go to Highland Bar and Grill the next time you're in Birmingham, Alabama. It's official. So good stuff. So you are the Food and Nutrition Director of Cooking Light. And when I think of Cooking Light, I mean, I remember, I think it was 1986 or 87 when the magazine was launched, and I can still kind of think back and remember. And I've been following Cooking Light for so many years. But tell everybody, what's it like to be the Food and Nutrition Director? I think it sounds kind of glamorous. So what's like a day in the life of Brierley Horton?
So what I always say to people that I love about my job is no day is like another day. It is constantly changing. So I'll give you a little glimpse into today. So today, you and I are talking. And when we're done, I will sit down and I'll do some editing on some files for an August magazine issue that we're actually wrapping up. I'll also do some editing on some September and October copy. Then I will go and do a product taste test for some products that we're including in October. This afternoon, we have these Good Food Awards that are launching in the fall, and so I'll be doing another taste test there. And then while all of this is happening, I will also be overseeing a photo shoot for a section of the magazine called Ask the Experts that I'm responsible for. And so that will be like a constant throughout my day today.
Tell everybody, since we really need to get into the bones of today's show, like why an entire issue on gut health? How did that come to be? Why did you decide to devote a whole issue to that subject?
Well, as you know, Liz, gut health is an area of nutrition science and even just science, because it goes beyond that connection to food that is exploding right now. I mean, a few years ago, it's not that it just was born a few years ago, but a few years ago, it really started to gain some momentum, and that momentum has not slowed. So when I was hired to come to Cooking Light about a little bit over a year ago, the first phone call that I had with Hunter Lewis, our editor-in-chief, he was really jazzed up about doing a gut health issue. Like he wanted to take the entire issue and devote it to gut health. And I thought, is everybody ready for this? Like, are our readers really ready for this? And so I thought, maybe I'll see if I can get him to just do the feature well, like the middle of the magazine where there's the longer stories and, the full page images of food. Like maybe we could just take that section and not do the entire issue. And so when we finally sat down in person and started going through it and I was pitching him these ideas, I pitched him just doing the feature section of the magazine, and I pitched him doing what it would look like if we did the entire issue. And he said, I absolutely wanted to do the entire issue, front to back, nuts and bolts, the whole thing. And I was really intimidated by the idea of that because I was really worried that it was going to be too much for the readers. And then as we started really digging into it and finalizing like what the concepts for each section were going to be, I got really, really excited because I thought, wow, we actually have this opportunity to make this feel really accessible to everybody. Wherever they are on the spectrum of gut health, I promise you they will find something in this issue that will appeal to them.
And there's a really great article just on the microbiome. What is it? How many bugs live in you and on you? Where do they live? We're more microbial than we are human. And so there's a really great primer article on it. So just tell everybody really briefly, what is the microbiome?
So the microbiome it's the trillions of bacteria, and I mean trillions of bacteria that are living in your GI tract. It's very concentrated in your lower GI, but there are also bacteria in your mouth. So when we say microbiome, that's what we mean. The trillions of bacteria that are living in your GI tract.
And they have so many powerful benefits. People think bacteria, they're bad for us. These are the good bacteria that we're talking about, and they have so many health benefits. So just kind of give us a broad overview of some of those health benefits.
Yeah. So when you talk about the gut microbiome, there are two things you want to aim for. You want to aim for diversity, and you want to aim for quote unquote good, promoting those good bacteria and not feeding those quote unquote bad bacteria. So the combination of good bacteria and diversity contributes to having a really healthy microbiome. And what that does is one of the biggest benefits that they're really seeing is it plays this amazing role, beneficial role in inflammation. And I'm sure you've talked about it before on your show that inflammation is tied to so many chronic conditions. And it's not to necessarily say that there is strong research that links a healthy gut microbiome to all of these other conditions that are associated with inflammation. But when we do talk about inflammation, we talk about everything from diabetes to cancer to heart disease to Alzheimer's. They all have roots in inflammation in your body. And so that is probably the biggest benefit of having a healthy microbiome. Another one that I personally find interesting because I am a mom and I have two kids is that they're finding that a lack of diversity in children and even in babies can then lead to higher rates of certain diseases later in life, like asthma is actually a big one. So doing what you can to help promote that diversity in your children can set them up for a healthier life later down the road.
So we really want to, as parents, feed our kids and ourselves a healthy diet. We want to live this healthy lifestyle so that we have lots of diversity and then we could boost the numbers of all these trillions of bacteria. So let's just talk about food. If you were to eat a diet that's ideal, that's going to promote a healthy microbiome, what are you going to eat? What are these sort of healthy probiotic foods? That's the foods with the good bugs. And then what about these prebiotic foods we hear about? So let's kind of dig into that a little bit.
Right. Okay. So it's kind of a two-pronged approach with what to eat for a healthy microbiome in the same way that it's a two-pronged approach from my perspective about what to eat just to be healthy. There are foods that you want to eat and there are foods that you want to try and limit. So when you talk about prebiotics and probiotics, those are obviously foods we really want to try and get into our diet as much as possible. Probiotics are those good bugs, and those are in foods that have probiotics are basically going to put those good bugs right into your body. So we're talking about fermented foods like yogurt and sauerkraut. And when we talk about sauerkraut, I do want to emphasize that it's not the canned sauerkraut. It's the refrigerated fresh sauerkraut. Miso, kimchi,
kefir,
yes. Mm-hmm. Pickles, actually, but again, with pickles, you want to look for the fermented ones, not the vinegar-based ones. So if there's vinegar in it, if it's a vinegar pickle, that's not going to have any, good bugs in it. Mm-hmm. And then there are the prebiotics, and prebiotics, I think, are probably the lesser known, but they're really just as important because prebiotics are food for probiotics. Prebiotics is basically providing your microbiome with the food to grow the good bacteria.
So basically the bacteria have to eat something. And what do they like to eat? Fiber, right?
Yes, they like to eat fiber. There are a couple kinds of fiber that we could talk about if you want that they really like. Cellulose is one, and cellulose is one of what we would call like an indigestible fiber. And so what's so great about it is that it really sustains that journey all the way from your mouth down to your lower GI. And if you think about it, like that's kind of a big journey, right? Like you chew it, it goes through your stomach acid, it travels through your upper intestine, then into your lower intestine. So cellulose is in the kind of foods that we tend to like throw away. So like the broccoli stalks, the asparagus stalks, the carrot peels, stringy celery, those sort of things. And one of the easiest ways, I think, to get more cellulose into my diet, and we happen to actually eat a lot of broccoli in my house for whatever reason, that is a vegetable that sticks with my kids. And so what I'll do is I'll just peel the tough part off the broccoli stem and chop it up and saute it a little bit or steam it. However I'm preparing my broccoli, like I'll just incorporate the stems. And for my kids, I'll do like thinner slices of it so that it is like sort of fake chip-like to them. And, you know, they're coming around to it. But the other part is that it cuts down on food waste. You're not throwing out that big bottom of your piece of broccoli.
So you're saying just peel it and then slice it really thin, like sort of these rounds, and then cook it up like you would the rest of the broccoli.
Exactly.
And we are going to talk about a broccoli slaw. I teased it in the intro, which we'll get into in a couple of minutes. And I've been eating this all week. So I am really like heavy on the cellulose this week. And so I know my good bacteria are very happy. So you want to eat this cellulose, right? Because it's making its way all the way down there to the lower GI. And what about other types of fiber that bacteria like to eat? Anything else?
Yeah, there's another one called fructans, and they are soluble fiber. So cellulose is insoluble, fructans are soluble. And you're going to find those in artichokes, also in asparagus. So asparagus kind of has like that double benefit. You'll find fructans in bananas, garlic, leeks, onions, whole wheat. I do want to emphasize, though, that fiber in general is beneficial for your microbiome and obviously for regularity and just general, GI comfort and health. But it seems like the research to date, at least, is really looking at both cellulose and fructan as having these like incredibly powerful benefits.
And, in my podcast in 2 weeks after this one airs, I'm doing a whole show on asparagus because it's in season here in New England. And so, of course, anybody who's excited about prebiotics should definitely tune in to that episode. So I've got this question from Emily. She's part of my podcast posse. And she says, how do you tell if a pre or probiotic is a good brand or strain? Because you know how sometimes you see supplements or you see foods that are enriched with prebiotics and probiotics. She said, I always thought they had to be refrigerated to be active. And then I've learned that there's a new process to freeze dry them so that they can survive, on the shelf, if you will. I mean, I've seen chips that have probiotics. I mean, there's so many things on the market now. So are there new sort of technologies so that these good bacteria and also this type of fiber can just survive no matter what?
Yes. So the fibers should survive. And I will give the disclaimer that because we are a food magazine, we didn't dial in too much on pill supplements, but we did actually take a section of the magazine. It's called Nutrition Made Easy. And we did an entire shopping guide to like probiotic enhanced foods. And it was actually news to me because I had not realized. I wondered the same thing. Like, wow, are these like sauerkraut chips really going to help me? I mean, wouldn't those good bugs be dead because you cooked the chips? But there is new technology. This is kind of a mouthful, but there's this strain called Bacillus coagulans, GBI 30. And it's encased in this protective spore, the bacteria is. So basically, because of that, it can survive the manufacturing process and the baking processes and that sort of thing that other strains would not survive, the ones that we would find like in a yogurt, that sort of thing. So if you take a look at that, if you pick up the magazine and you take a look at that section, you will see a variety of products that both include that particular strain that is shelf stable and also other products that have less stable versions, but that are, for the most part, refrigerated. Mm-hmm. When you're looking at those products, like, you can look at the ingredient list and you'll see Bacillus coagulans, and that would be an indicator like, oh, okay, these chips are legit because this is a shelf-stable variety. But the other thing you also want to try and look for, particularly when you're looking to really utilize these to up your probiotic intake, is if you can, you want to try and also find products that have multiple strains, because that gets back to the diversity.
Okay. And also the other thing too is that you could be consuming some of these probiotic beverages, like Farmhouse Culture has these gut shots. And that's kind of cool to me that you could just drink them. I mean, you can drink kombucha, you can drink kefir, but then there's some of these other products that are specifically designed as probiotic beverages. But you can't forget your diet. In other words, you can't forget those prebiotics, the fiber. And if you're just consuming a highly processed, typical quote unquote American diet, then you're not doing your gut any good. I mean, this is another argument to get the junk food out of the diet, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the typical American diet really only comes in at about half of our daily fiber recommendations. So it absolutely, like, the way that I like to view these probiotic infused foods is that they might be like a nice, literally a nice supplement, but that I still really have to target to eat other, whole foods that contain probiotics, that contain fiber. And the other thing too about diet is that plant-based the research really is pointing to plant-based being extremely beneficial. And I'm not saying exclusively plant-based, but that whole, eat plants mantra that Michael Pollan has, mostly plants. Sorry, eat food. I've got to look it up.
Forgive me. Wait a minute. She's turning the pages of the magazine. I could hear you.
I'm turning the pages of the magazine to try and find where I've got his quote in here specifically. Yes, eat food, not too much, mostly plants.
There you go. So you want to eat appropriate calories and mostly plants. And that's a good framework. I had Jessica, one of my posse members. She says she wants to know about yummy recipes that are the most productive for adults and kids. And so I turned to the article in the magazine, which was called Good Things Come in Pairs. And the reason I love this particular article and the issue is that you have recipes that provide probiotics and also prebiotics. So it's like a 1-2 punch. And I made the recipe in this issue for broccoli and kraut slaw. And I made it for dinner the other night. We actually topped it with some smoked salmon and some avocado because I'm like, I'm going to just make this dinner and not a side dish. But I wanted to talk about this broccoli and kraut slaw because I think Jessica will like it. I've been eating it all week and I feel so much better. I feel like my immune system is stronger as a result. And so the recipe calls for plain whole milk Greek yogurt, and that's your probiotic, right?
Yes.
And then it calls for rice vinegar, canola oil. I might have used olive oil, honey, white miso, garlic, and some pepper. So tell us, that's like the dressing for this slaw. But tell us a little bit about miso because it's very salty, but it might not be a familiar ingredient. It does contain good bacteria. But what is miso?
So miso is fermented soybean paste. And in a previous issue, we did a whole feature on miso. So I dove deep into miso. And what is really neat about miso is that there's kind of a range of flavors. Like you can go from sweet and mild white miso all the way to red miso, which has like much more of a kick. But it's fermented soybean paste, so it has probiotics in it naturally. That said, if you heat it, it will kill some, maybe even all of the bugs. But it's very salty. It adds that kind of like salty, savory flavor to the dressing and, a little bit of depth to the dressing as well. Yeah,
I love it. I love miso. So I made the dressing, right? And then the actual ingredients in the slaw, you've got a medium head of broccoli. So here's your great fiber that you kind of slice up. You kind of shave it, if you will. You've got red cabbage, red onion. I want to say something about that in a second. Scallions, golden raisins. I had dried apricots and I sliced those up instead of the raisins. And then it calls for refrigerated sauerkraut. And yesterday I made a tuna melt and I added sauerkraut to that, kind of like a Reuben. So you've got the sauerkraut, which again has the probiotics. So you've got the probiotics and the prebiotics. And I will say about the red onion, I don't love the taste of raw onion. And so what I did was I sliced the onion as directed, put it in a bowl, and then I just added a little bit of acid. I added just a little bit of extra rice vinegar right over the onion and let it kind of marinate for a few minutes, and it mellowed out the flavor, right? So I always add my acid to garlic or to onion just to kind of mellow it out. So that's the only real change I made. And then I just, tossed everything together. And like I said, I topped it. You could top it with chicken or grilled shrimp or whatever. And I turned it into a meal. And I love this article. What are some other recipes in the article for people who don't have the magazine in front of them? But I encourage everybody to go out and get this issue.
Well, first of all, I love the dinner that you put together, and I wish that I could have come over and eaten it with you.
I wish, yeah.
So in the Good Things Come in Pairs recipe feature, one of my favorites actually is a grilled Caesar salad with sourdough breadcrumbs. And what we've got there's a Greek yogurt infused dressing, and it's grilled romaine, which sadly is slightly implicated with some E. coli these days.
Yes, yeah. You have to be careful, of course. And also, just so you know, my grill is not up and running yet because I live in New England and it became spring about 3 days ago. And so that's why I was looking at that recipe as well, and it looked really good. So you've got the grilled romaine, and what else is going on? And that dressing.
And the dressing, and then there's some crumbled sourdough bread that toasted, so it's breadcrumb-esque. You're using sourdough bread because sourdough is also, made with that bacteria as well.
Bacteria, yeah.
The good bacteria. And then there are some chickpeas in there, some roasted chickpeas to add even more fiber. And it might sound like it's light, but this portion size that you get, it is a hearty salad. It is quite delicious. There's also a sesame salmon with a kimchi miso butter, so like a roasted salmon that then gets slathered with this really yummy kimchi miso butter. And I think what's great about the kimchi miso butter is that if you haven't really gotten into kimchi or miso yet, but you're interested in trying them, it's a really nice pairing with the salmon, and it's kind of a nice way to try it out and just see what you think.
Kind of getting into it. You really should sort of get into this slowly in the sense that if you're not consuming enough fiber, like if you're the average American and you're getting half of the recommended fiber, you're telling people kind of take it slow so your gut can get used to it. But you also in the magazine have like a 3-day, now I'm turning the pages, 3-day gut health makeover where you really you give people a shopping list, you give them recipes, and then you could just kind of try it out for 3 days where you're eating all these pro and prebiotic foods and getting used to these daily pairings of the good bugs with the bug food, if you will.
Exactly. And it is a vegan 3-day meal plan, and that is based on a study that was published a couple of years ago in Nature where it found that eating this like high fiber plants only diet can shift your microbiome in a positive direction within 24 hours. Now, it doesn't stay that way. Like if you went back the next day to just eating your regular, like very Americanized diet, it's not going to stay that way. But the point is that you can make a rapid shift in 24 hours, and then you can it's a nice way to reboot and just get into the habit of incorporating more plant-based into your diet. And by no means are we saying like only eat this way, but it will make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I eat, and in my podcast, I cover all sorts of topics. I eat mostly a plant-based diet. I would say like Mediterranean, although a lot of the ingredients here are sort of Asian, right? The kimchi and the miso. And so I'm really trying to kind of shake it up a little bit, incorporate some of those foods. But I eat meat and I eat fish, but that's kind of a smaller part of the diet. So I think we're seeing a huge shift. The plant-based is huge. The other thing too is that Kimmy, who's one of my podcast posse members, she had a really interesting question, and she said that she wants to help her husband eat healthier, and he mentioned wanting to go on a 3-day or a 1-day cleanse to start out. And that got me thinking about your 3-day gut health Makeover. So I don't know if you really need to go on a cleanse per se. I think you just have to shift over to eating more plants. I mean, what do you think about that, Brierley?
I completely agree with you. I would say just make a shift towards eating more plants. And if you really wanted to feel like you were going the route of a cleanse, I wouldn't say go the route of juices. I mean, particularly when we're talking about gut health, right? Because juice doesn't have any fiber in it anymore. So that's not going to do too much for your gut health. But I mean, I don't know about you, Liz, but when I've gone through a week just either by choice or by happenstance of eating plant-based, like usually vegetarian. I don't usually go so far as vegan just because I really like to have a little milk in my coffee. Mm-hmm. But, I notice a difference in the way that I feel.
Yeah. And the thing too that kind of worries me when I think about Josh, especially, he's 23. He lives in New York. He's working on, not on Wall Street, but he's got like a finance job. He's constantly eating out and grabbing lunch on the go. And it does concern me. I'm constantly talking to him about this because when he comes home to visit, like if I put out hummus and carrot sticks, he will literally eat the whole bag, right? I mean, he loves vegetables. And when you're on your own, it's really hard, I think, for these young working professionals. So yeah, I'm not into the cleanse as much as just get the plants onto your plate. I think that makes a big difference.
Right. I completely agree.
And
plants.
More plants. Now, plants grow in the dirt, and I do not have a green thumb, but some people love to garden. And that's the other cool thing. I mean, I know Cooking Light, it's all about food, but the other thing I will point out, and maybe you can add to this, is that if you play in the dirt or you have a dog or you live on a farm, there's a lot of good bacteria out in nature. So that's really good for your gut too, right? If you're playing out in the dirt.
It really is. Just the idea of getting a little dirty, spending a little time outdoors, exposing yourself to just all of the bugs that are out there really can be good for your microbiome. And I would say, when I lived in Vermont, we had the windows open a lot because it wasn't too hot, and we had a garden, and it was very much in line with what you read about recommending. And now that I moved to Alabama, I mean, it is too hot in the summer to open your windows. And we very much live in an air-conditioned lifestyle, but you can find ways to incorporate nature back into your life. But it does make me think, I mean, something so simple sometimes is just opening the windows. I mean, now, granted, in New York City, there might be air pollution, but right. Please go for a walk in Central Park instead. But yeah, and there are little ways that you can do it. I mean, you do not have to have a backyard to have a garden. Like you could even just, do some potted plants on your patio. That makes a difference. Or herbs. I mean, you're sticking your hands in the dirt. That's great. Mm-hmm. Or flowers even. Right.
Just to garden. I mean, my neighbor, I looked out the window yesterday and I'm like, every spring, this is what she does. Like, she's such a good gardener. Her flowers are beautiful. So, it's like, I was thinking about this episode and like, she's doing her gut a favor.
Yes.
I was sort of laughing when I was thinking, sort of writing out some questions for you. And I was thinking about this whole concept of being outside. And I have a cousin named Cousin David. He lives in upstate New York, and he's married to a woman named Bobby, and they live on a farm. And Bobby's son lives on the farm with his wife and their baby. And my husband Tim was up visiting last year, and he says to me, Liz, that baby is going to have the healthiest microbiome. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, all right, she's outside crawling around, in the dirt. They have this giant dog, and he's lumbering over to her, and he's licking her face. And then her pacifier is falling on the ground, and her mom picks it up and pops it right back in her mouth. She's just in the dirt, and she's loving life, and she's getting exposed to all this good bacteria, right? They say if you live on a farm, you have a pet, it boosts the diversity of the bugs that live in your gut. It's fascinating stuff.
It really is. It really is. And this might be sharing too much information or putting out there my parenting style. But like with my kids, my younger one, we're in the middle of potty training. And with my kids, like I'm always very diligent. Like, please, after you go to the bathroom, wash your hands. And they come out. Did you wash your hands? No. Go back in there. Wash your hands. But they go and they play in the yard, and we are in the midst of installing a small garden, and they play with the dogs, and they play in the backyard. And my backyard here in Birmingham is truly the size of a postage stamp, but still, it's a backyard. And we come in for lunch or dinner, and I don't make them wash their hands. They've just been playing outside. I mean, sure, they might get sick, but there's also probably some good stuff too. That's just my approach.
Yeah. I mean, as long as it's, you're not like spraying stuff out there. If you just have sort of an all natural backyard, then you don't need to wash your hands necessarily. But if you were like at the library and there's 30 kids sniveling, that's when you want to wash your hands. Or like you said, you went to the bathroom. Hey, speaking of going to the bathroom, a few months ago, I actually want to do a whole show on poop, because your poop really is indicative of your health. I mean, I was reading in the issue that 75% of people with Parkinson's disease have a history of constipation. I mean, it's all tied in, your brain health tied into your gut health. And so a few months ago, Tim and I did our Ancestry.com. We did our DNA. I actually just found a new cousin. Like I was talking to my mom about this on the phone last night. People find you and you've got these relatives, right? But we did our DNA. We spit into this little tube and off it went. But there's this real big trend right now for people to actually send a sample of a little bit of their poop into another company that will map out your microbiome. So the DNA of your microbiome. I think that is super cool. And I think in the future, people will do that, and that'll help to predict health outcomes. Have you done your poop DNA yet, Brierley?
I have not, but I am really intrigued, especially after working with the writer behind the main story that explains what your microbiome is, because she did it. Mm-hmm. And I am fascinated by the idea of doing it. I just haven't pulled the trigger.
You haven't pulled the trigger. I know. I haven't either. I've been thinking about it, and you know what? People listening, you could send in a poop sample, right? And get your microbiome mapped. Then you could start this whole new healthy lifestyle. And a year later, do it again and see if there's a change. I mean, that would be pretty cool too. Like a before and after, the true makeover, the microbiome makeover. Why not? So
that would be really cool.
It would be. So from poop to a game I have been playing in season 2 of Liz's Healthy Table, a chopped style game. And that is, I'm going to hand you an ingredient, Brierley, and I want you to cook something up for a fast family dinner. You've got 2 little girls at home. You're making dinner. I'm sure you're deep in the trenches of family mealtime. So if I were to hand you tofu, it doesn't have to be, it could be soft tofu, extra firm. I don't care. I'm going to hand you some tofu. What are you going to do with it for family dinner?
I just have to say, I love that you picked tofu, by the way, because I have a 2.5-year-old and a 5-year-old. So tofu is, in my house, it's hit or miss. So what would I do? I would press it. I would put it wrap it up in some paper towels and put it between 2 cast iron skillets and try and press out some of the moisture on it. I would then probably let it sit there for 15 minutes, maybe longer if I had the time. Then I would slice it into steaks, and I prefer to put it on the grill, but I would, depending on what was going on and that day or what the weather was like, I might just put it in a screaming hot cast iron skillet and sear the heck out of it. Not burn it, but get a good, nice sear on it. And now that I've pressed it, I've dried out some of the moisture, so it's going to promote that sear even more. And then, because as you know, Liz, you give your kids something where they can dip into, and it is more likely to go over well. So then I would take a yogurt, probably a Greek yogurt based dip, and I'd probably either put in some tahini or maybe some curry or both into that Greek yogurt and serve it either on the side so that they could dip their tofu into it or put it on top. And then there is always at least 1 vegetable, if not 2, on my dinner plate. So I would definitely be asking you what kind of vegetables you were going to give me in my chopped.
Anything you want. How about, obviously broccoli is one, right? Because you're broccoli fans. And anything goes, right? What veggies do your kids love?
Well, just like you were talking about carrots. Carrots are huge. Cucumbers are huge. Broccoli. I can actually get them to eat baked kale. They do well if it's baked.
Oh, like a kale chip kind of thing?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I can remember Josh when he was younger eating kale chips for the first time and standing at the stove over the sheet pan and pretty much eating the entire thing. And they're so addicting. You cannot stop eating them. Yeah, kale chips it is. I love what you've done with tofu. Sounds good to me. Anything, Brierley, like for our listeners, obviously getting this June issue of Cooking Light, I think is a must. And I can't wait to hear what people think of it. And I want to remind people too, we're going to give away a copy of Fresh Food Fast to one lucky winner. So head on over to the show notes for today's episode to enter to win. US only, please. Sorry, but that's what we got to do. And what am I trying to say? Oh, so my brain just went off in a different direction. So my last question to you is, other than the issue, are there any other like cookbooks out there that you think are very plant-based that people might enjoy or that you like cooking from that you might want to recommend?
Yeah, I have to be honest that I haven't dug too deep into some of the gut health focused cookbooks that are out there. But in terms of plant-based, I am a big fan of Otto Alengi's stuff. I really like what he's done. One of the Food and Wine editors has a really awesome cookbook all on sweet potatoes that I think is really fun.
What's it called?
It is called, I've got it right here in my office, actually.
And I will say for people who listen to my show, you know that I love Yotam Ottolenghi as well. And Brierley, if you know him personally and could convince him to come on my podcast, he's only like the most famous chef in the world, but I really want to have him on the show because I love this guy.
If I could convince him for you, I would. I did interview him 2 weeks ago, and it was epic. It was a once-in-a-lifetime kind of experience for me.
Wow.
The sweet potato book is called...
Hello.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I'm not worthy. I am not worthy. Congratulations on getting that interview.
Thank you. He's got a new cookbook coming out in the fall. So
I know.
Coinciding it with his new cookbook.
Of course I know.
Yes. Yes. The sweet potato book is called Roasted, Loaded, Fried, and Made into Pie Sweet Potatoes. And her name is Mary Frances Heck.
Wow.
I mean, it's not all plant-based, but it's obviously very sweet potato heavy.
So many good cookbooks out there. And I love this issue of Cooking Light. And I'm so excited you have even a chickpea brownie recipe in there. I am just so pumped about it. And I'm just so happy you joined us. Anything else you want to share about your microbiome or anything related to it that we haven't touched on?
I think the only thing that I would want to leave everybody with is please pick up the issue, because I promise you will find something that will appeal to you, even if it is one tiny thing. But also, it doesn't need to be this major overhaul. Like, you can do tiny changes that will move in the right direction, and the research is going to continue to grow and we'll continue to learn more. And so I don't want it to feel overwhelming to people. I want it to feel delicious. I want it to feel attainable and fun.
That's a great last message for our listeners. Brierley, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. This was lovely.
So yeah, there you have it. The microbiome, there is so much more to learn. But the key really is just to kind of dig in, right? Get started, eat more fiber, eat more probiotic foods, and then you're going to be on your way to a healthier life, because that microbiome sure plays a huge role in your health and the health of your family. So thanks for listening today, everybody. Don't forget to visit liz'shealthytable.com/podcast to get the show notes filled with resources from today's show. I'm also going to give you that broccoli recipe that we talked about. So head on over, check it out, enter the giveaway. And if you like the show, don't hesitate to post a review on Stitcher, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening. Next time it's asparagus. Can't wait for you to join us again.